Okay, we're on page 116. We're still in the Chayei. I want to finish up. Hopefully, get onto Tolos today. So on page 116, let's start over there. Eliezer comes into the house, and now Eliezer is talking to the family, and he says to them, he tells them the whole story about how I came here to, and he tells the whole story, and I met her at the what do you call it? Now take a look on the very top of page 116. He tells them he's got a whole soliloquy over here. He tells them the whole story, how the conversation started with Avram Avinu. He said, don't take a girl from the surrounding the Canaanites. And Eliezer said to Avram Avinu, yeah, but what if this girl doesn't want to come with me? Should I bring Yitzchak there? And Avram said, no, Yitzchak can't leave Eretz Yisrael because Yitzchak was a korban, and therefore Yitzchak had been on the Mizbeach. He can't leave Eretz Yisrael. So on the top of page 16, take a look at the very first pasuk. Eliezer is talking to them, and he says like this: Va'omar el Adoni, I said to my master, Ulai lo selech ha'isha acharoi. Maybe the woman will not want to go after me. Maybe she won't want to come with. So you take a look at Rashi over here. And Rashi, the very first line of Rashi, it's the first paragraph, top line. Rashi says, Ulai lo selech ha'isha, says Rashi, Elai ksiv. It says, it could be read as Elai because there's no vav in the word. You look in the Torah says Ulai without a vav. So why does it say Elai, which really means to me? So Rashi says, Bas haisalol Eliezer. Eliezer had a daughter. He was trying to find a reason, Sheyomar lo Avram, that Avram should say, Lifnos elav lasia bito. Eliezer had a daughter, and there's nothing more that Eliezer would have liked than to have this daughter. Right? To have his daughter marry Yitzchak. What a great shidduch that would be for Eliezer. So, Amar lo Avram, bini Baruch, my son is blessed, ve'ata oru, you are cursed, ve'in oru midabik b'baruch. He can't mix the two together, because you're inherently disqualified because you come from the descendants of Canaan. That we spoke about. Remember, we mentioned that. Okay. So Rashi over here, quoting the Medrash, says, well, do you know why it doesn't say the Vav? Because Eliezer had a personal bias here. In other words, when Eliezer said, if you know, in English, you could say maybe and you could say perhaps. Okay? Now, if you're sending me to go find a daughter for your daughter, a daughter for your son, I'm Eliezer, and if I really want to do what you want me to do, in other words, sometimes in life you're worried something might happen. You'll say, well, what if? What if means, what if and there's a negative occurrence here and she doesn't want to go with me? What if I'd say to you, perhaps she wouldn't want to go with me? What would that indicate?
That's what you want.
I'm hoping for that, right? Okay, so in Hebrew there are two ways to say perhaps. You could say ulai, and you could say pen. Pen has got a negative connotation. Well, what if not? Like it's almost like that's not what I want to have happen. Pen, that's the last thing I want to have happen if she won't go with me. Ulai is like optimistic. Eliezer says, ulai she won't want to go with me. So Chazal say, why was Eliezer hoping? Why was he hoping? It almost sounds like he's hoping the girl will say no, because it's spelled Eli, because he's got a daughter. He's hoping. Oh, Abraham will say, if she doesn't go with you, then I'll take your daughter. That's what Chazal are saying over here. It's a very big question, though. Very big question. If you turn back for a second to page 110, keep your finger on the place here. Turn back to 110. And you'll notice that on page 110, 5 lines from the top on page 110. Count down 5 lines, and this is where the actual conversation takes place. And it says, Vayomer elav ha'eved, the slave says to him, Ulai lo sova isha leches acharai. Maybe she won't want to come with me. But you'll notice that over there it says it with a vav. The indication that he's biased is when it says it without a vav, because Ulai could be Eli, to me. So if he's biased, he was biased from the beginning. Why does it only indicate the bias when he's telling them over the story? Why doesn't it say, should say right away? Avram said, do me a favor. He says, Ulai, without a vav. And the Torah says, oh, by the way, Eliezer had a daughter he was hoping. So the commentators have a very, very interesting insight here. You see, in life, sometimes you have a bias, and you don't even know you have the bias until the game's over. Once you're no longer in the running, then you're able to admit, oh, I had a bias. I didn't even realize myself what a bias I had. That means Eliezer comes, he sees there's a Rivka, he knows that she's the one, and he knows that the job is done, and he knows that this is going to be it. At that point, his subconscious, I really would have liked her for myself. Sometimes in life, we're not even willing to admit that we have a bias until we're no longer in the game. Once we're no longer in the game, so, you've been rejected by the girl. That doesn't bother me. Doesn't bother me. Until she marries somebody else. Now you're no longer in the running. Ooh, it does sting. Her dad does have a lot of money. That hurts. And at that point, once you're out of it, you're willing to admit you had a bias. In sports, it's like that. My team's better than your team. I'm not even willing to advise till the game's over. Now I can say, well, I guess they did have better pitching, hitting, fielding, managing, and coaching. All the things that I wasn't willing to admit to. So here's a very interesting insight into human nature. After the fact, Eliezer says, Eli, I did want that one for myself. He's got nothing to lose now because now you can admit the bias because you're out of the running anyway. Okay? So he tells them over the whole story. And then they say to him, well, let's ask her. Now I want to show you something which the commentaries actually say. If you take a look on page 118. Very interesting insight. We're going to see a few interesting insights into I was going to say human nature, but it's woman nature. Not that they're not human, but maybe it's we who are not. It says like this. He says, gives them the whole story, and then they say to him, it's Pasuk Nun Zayin, 57. 57, it's about 7 lines from the top. If you find it, please show the person next to you. Vayomru, they say to him, Nikra Lanara, let's call the young lady, Vinishala Espiha. Let's call her and let's ask her. Now, if you were saying modern Hebrew, let's ask her, how would you say it? How would you say it in modern Hebrew? Nishal Ota. Let's ask her. I don't know of any other expression where it says in the Torah, Nishala Espiha, let's ask her mouth. What do you mean ask her mouth? Just say, let's call the young lady and let's ask her. Why does it say, let's say, yes, you understand what they're coming, and I saw 3 different, I've heard 2 and seen a 3rd different explanation. Why does it say Nishala? Page 118, about the 10th line from the top. Nishala Espia, let's ask her mouth. Anybody got an idea? Why would it say let's ask her mouth? What do you say, Elia? What's that?
She's really young. She doesn't necessarily isn't really thinking. She's just
very close. Again, your first name is? Josh. Very good. You're very close, yeah? Yeah, you're learning a lot of Gemara. Yeah, there you go. You're with the Nara. Okay, the Nara over here, which Isaac is itching to find out about, is that she's 3 years old. So over here, so we're talking about 3 years old. So she doesn't have halachic status, right? So we'll find out about what that 3 years old means in a second. But let's say she's a Nara. I don't care what she is with age. According to some, she's 14 years old. According to Midrashim, 3 years old is only an idea of purity. There are other ideas that her neshama has only been in her for 3 years since the Akedah. In other words, she's older, but the neshama that's suitable for Yitzchak was only instilled in her in the Akedah 3 years earlier. That's what it means 3 years old. Anyway, number 3, if she was 3 years old, it doesn't bother me personally, because before I'm bothered that she's 3 years old, I got to be bothered by the fact that Avram's 180 and that Noach is 500. If you're not bothered at the far end, don't bother at the near end. If you're bothered, be bothered by the whole thing. If you're not bothered, don't be bothered at all. I had a guy once, in the morning you get up, you watch Negovasser, right? 3 times on each hand. The guy said to me, how come you could only remove it 3 times on each hand? It doesn't make any sense. You can only remove it 3 times alternating. Why can't you go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3? I said to the guy, I understand. You believe that there's a spirit on your hand? That part you're okay with, that there's a spirit on your hand, that you have no issue with. Your only issue is how to get rid of the spirit. That's your only problem. I understand. If you believe that the people who said there's a spirit, so believe them when they say how to get rid of it. And if you don't believe them and how to get rid of it, so why do you believe that it's there to begin with? Either way, you can't see it. So let's find out what we're really bothered by here. So the commentators say very, very close to what Josh says. You see, there are 2 problems here. Problem number 1 is, not that she won't think. Problem is that we're worried in that if she starts thinking about it, then, you got a bunch of people standing around here. Maybe, I don't really want to go, but, everybody's looking at me and they're waiting for an answer. My brother's eager, all right, I'll go. So Nishala Ispia indicates, let's get her first reaction. Let's just get her first reaction. Boom. Let's hear what she has to say, because that's really what she wants. That's one approach. There's a second approach here, which is that if you're married any great length of time, like about 10 minutes, you will find that women don't always say what they mean. Mr. Fogel laughs. What? Did you say what? Did you say what? Uh-huh. Are you married? No, you're not. Otherwise, you wouldn't be saying what. Women, ask anybody, women don't always say what they mean. You know, you could come home and say to your wife, you want to go eat out tonight? And just say, no. Which means? Yeah. Absolutely. That's right. That means absolutely. Yeah, get ready. Get ready. Get ready. And you better know what that no means. Because if you don't, you are history. No could mean yes, yes could mean no, and maybe could be neither. So you could end up in a lot of trouble. And a woman could sometimes say to you something like, here, I'll give you a personal example. This is a real example. I'm on my way out to shul in the morning. This is more when the kids were young and the house is all turmoil. There's what I call the turmoil half hour in the morning, when in between the time, you know, that they get up and time we get to get them out to school. Now I'm on my way out to Minyan, and as I hit the door, right at the line of scrimmage, my wife says, oh boy, I guess I'll have to do this all by myself in the house. Now, what is your reaction meant to be? So if your reaction is, oh, all right, I won't go to shul, I'll help you. No, I could do it, don't you? You just go daven. Right? That's okay. So what is your reaction meant to be? But she said to me, I guess I'll have to do it. Didn't it sound like a plea for help? Isn't that what it sounded like? The answer is, it wasn't a plea for help. The answer was just that I should turn around and acknowledge and say, wow, you're unbelievable, wow. Yeah, that's all it was. That's all. Just a recognition that I am in the jungle and you're going to have a good time with your tefillin and shul. Right? That's all she said. A person has to know, if my wife, one time in all the years, my wife asked me not to go to shul. In all the years, my wife asked me not to go. I was actually at the door. My wife said, you know, I have a fever, you know, I think I need you to stay home and help. And the tone was a different tone, and I said, okay, I stayed home. I was glad to stay home and help her, not daven alone. Then I asked my Rabbi afterwards what he thought I should have done. I had no doubt. And I had no doubt what he would say. I just want to hear how he would say it. So he said to me, look, your wife wants you to daven in shul. If she's actually asking you for help, then obviously you have to stay home. She's actually asking. But they don't always say what they mean. Sometimes they can say no and it's a yeah. Sometimes they can say yeah and it's a no. So Eliezer, they want to make a condition with Eliezer. You know, we're going to ask the girl. She'll say no. We don't want to hear from you. Well, she said no, and all of a sudden, you know, but really it means yeah, and it's really the, we don't, none of that. We don't want to hear any of that. Nishala is pia. Whatever she says, whatever comes out of her mouth, that's what we're going to do. She says yes, it's a yes. She says no, it's a no, without any of the men are from Mars interpretations. And matter of fact, you know, with what she really meant, and what she could have meant, and what she should have meant, none of that. We're making a precondition. Number 2. That I heard from Rabbi Perlman here in the yeshiva. Number 3 is a Ksav Sofer. Ksav Sofer is one of the classic commentaries. He says, you know, the Jewish girls, the sign of a good girl, what's the first sign of a good girl? What's the first sign of a good girl? No, man. The first sign of a good girl is a dollar sign. That's the first sign of a good girl. Shame on all of you. You know, if you've been in the shiur long enough to know that. Okay, but okay. Once we get to the second sign, what's the second sign of a good girl? It's like a Jewish girl. She's chesed and she's tznius. Tznius is a sign. Tznius is not only how long your skirt is. Tznius is not only how long your shirt sleeves are. Tznius is your whole demeanor. Person or girl doesn't talk loud in the streets. For boys could be tznuah also, by the way. Men are supposed to be tznuah also. You're not supposed to be out and loud and seen and about. Tznuah, be discreet, be restraint, a little restraint. But in a woman, especially, that's a midah, that's a trait that a woman is meant to have, is tznuah. She's discreet, she's behind the scenes, she's not looking for all the men to be looking at her, and so on and so forth. A girl who's tznuah might be afraid to say yes. You want to go with this man and marry his son? She might just, as tznius, you're not so abrupt to say yes. So Lavan and family are saying to Eliezer, listen, if she doesn't give an answer, it's a no. Don't tell me, well, really she wants to, and she's tznuah, which is exactly why I think she's suitable for you. It's like the fact that she didn't even say anything that proves that she's the right one. No kvetching with the thumb, as they say. We're not, you know, none of this. Yeah, well, really, you know, none of that Jewish stuff. Yeah, nisha la espia. Let's ask her mouth. You know the story, the kid who goes into the swimming in the hotel swimming pool. So the guard comes over and says, hey, can't you read the sign? It says no swimming allowed. So the kid says, it's not what it says. It says no, swimming allowed. None of that. None of the Jewish stuff. You know, don't get Jewish on me. You know, this is it. She says it, she doesn't say it. Nisha lo yaspia. That's what the commentaries say. Okay. So Eliezer brings her home, and he brings her to Yitzchak. Now, take a look at Pasuk Samach Vav. Take a look at page 120. Page 120, Pasuk Samach Vav. So it says like this. It's 5 lines from the top. Pasuk Samach Vav. Vayisaper ha'eved liYitzchak. Everybody see that? Vayisaper ha'eved liYitzchak es kol hadvarim asher asa. The Eved tells Yitzchak everything that he did. And Rashi says, in Pasuk Samach Vav, it's the 6th line of Rashi on the right column. Rashi says, Vayisaper ha'eved gilo lo nisim shenasu lo. He revealed to Yitzchak the miracles that you're done. Shekofza lo ha'aretz, that the land, kfitzas ha'aretz, means that he had supernatural speed in getting there. He left there, until he got there in one day. It's a miracle. It's called kfitzas ha'aretz. V'shenizdana lo Rivka b'tfilah, so that Rivka was a response to his tefillah. Boom, boom. Tells her the whole story. Okay. So the first question over here is, okay, so the land, it was speeded up. We find this phenomenon in other places, something called kfitzas haderech, that you're walking and really you're almost in a time warp, right? And you get there faster than you really should have gotten there. Okay, it's called kfitzas haderech. You heard of the idea, kfitzas haderech. Okay. So one of the lessons they learn over here is the commentators say, okay, I don't say this is the plain meaning of the pasuk. It says, when this is a shidduch. This is a shidduch. First shidduch we find in history. A shidduch has divine intervention. God runs shidduchim. And when it's time for the shidduch to happen, the shidduch is going to happen. And if it means kfitzas ha'aretz, so God will make things, speed things up also. Now it's time, now it's going to happen. That's the faith one has to have in matchmaking. Number one. Number two, the very interesting concept in the Gemara. Now pay attention carefully. Gemara says, there was once a man who was davening to marry a certain woman. Now, you're not supposed to daven like that. I think it was Rava came to him and said, don't say that tefillah. Don't daven, I want to marry Zelda. You daven, I want to get married. Daven to Hashem, you should have a zivuk. You don't marry for a specific woman because maybe she's not the right one for you. And your tefillah could be answered. You could actually get her even though she's not the right one. So the guy davened anyway, and he ended up marrying Zelda. And then he was miserable. Miserable, you know. The what do you call it? The infatuation wore off. The checking account ran dry, and all of a sudden, you know, he's not so happy anymore. And Rava said, "Look, I told you, don't daven for that. That's not what you daven for." Okay. Now, so the commentaries say like this. You see, Eliezer davened for Rivka. He said, "Please, Hashem, daven, send me the girl." The girl comes out. How do you know that was a legitimate tefillah? How do you know that he was answered? Maybe Hashem just sent him the girl. You daven. I thought, you shouldn't be davening like that. And you daven like that anyway. Maybe she's not suitable. And Yitzchak might be thinking, look, you daven and she came out. I don't know. Is that, what proof do we have? Oh, Eliezer says, but there was also kfitzas ha'aretz. I had special divine intervention in getting there quick and getting back quick. Oh, God is not going to make miracles in order to bring you a bad wife. The wrong wife, he's not going to, maybe he'll answer your tefillah, but he's not going to do miracles to get her to you. It's bad enough you have to deal with her when she arrives. You won't have to deal with her earlier than she arrives. God did a miracle. He brought her sooner. Oh, now we're talking. That's the final seal that this is obviously, if God miraculously brought her to me, that's obviously the one that I meant to get. By the way, sometimes the Gemara says we find the difference between Yitzchak and Yaakov. Sometimes God will bring the wife to you, and sometimes God will bring you to the wife. In other words, where do you find her? Where do you find her? Well, some guys have found her, I'll tell you one story. We had a guy in a yeshiva. So Yitzchak stayed home, and the wife was brought to him. Where did Yaakov get his wife? He had to go on the run. Yaakov had to go all the way to the other country to find his wife. And God works funny ways. We had a guy in our yeshiva, and the other yeshiva that I'm involved with, This guy decided he had to go to America for his brother's wedding. And he decided he's going to be on the plane. He doesn't want to watch the TV on the plane or whatever the entertainment is because it's not, the inappropriate things you could see. He decided on the plane he will do one of three things. He will either eat, sleep, or learn Torah on the plane. Everybody tries to learn a little bit, but it's hard. You're tired. You're just sitting there. You're bummed out. Okay. He pulls out his Gemara, and he's sitting there learning, slept a little, ate a little. Every spare minute he was learning. The young lady on the plane. The young lady spotted him. She's a base Yaakov girl. He can't go up to the guy and meet him, but she's looking for a guy who's a serious learner. He says, hey, that guy's a serious learner. So they happened to be a kollel couple on the plane. She went up to the kollel couple. She said, maybe you could find out the boy's details. You get me the details, and I'll call a shot when I get to America, and we'll do it the proper way. 2 weeks later, the couple was engaged. Wow. The guy wasn't even looking for a shidduch. He wasn't involved in the shidduch. He was going back for his brother's marriage. He wasn't even looking to get married at the time. So sometimes HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings it to you. Sometimes you got to go traveling the world to find it. Sometimes you have to go. People a guy comes from America, and a girl comes from Australia, and they meet in Israel to get married. That's how shidduchim work. That's how matchmaking works. Yeah, you gotta.
Avram sent out his son to find. Why did he bring Rebecca straight to Yitzchak and not go to Avram and tell Avram what happened? Why does he go back to Yitzchak?
It's a good question. Yitzchak is 40 years old already. So he can make his own decisions. Avram is sent. Yitzchak, and he came to saw Yitzchak, and it's an interesting question. I don't know. Probably because Yitzchak's the one who asked to marry her. Okay, I would imagine. I'm sure Avram was invited to the wedding. The Torah never goes into all these details. Even the world war that Avram Avinu fights is told us that's in about 2 psukim. Doesn't go into any of the details of the world war. Just says they fought a war, captured Lot, brought him back home. Guarantee you there's a big war over there. The Torah does not go into any nest. It's not a storybook. I'm sure, Avram was invited, but the one who's got to make the decision ultimately is Yitzchak. Okay, I'll check into Bli Neder. It's a good question. Now look at the next pasuk. There are 3 important lessons here. Vayivia Yitzchak ohela Sarah imo. Yitzchak brings her into the tent of Sarah, his mother. Vayikach es Rivka. He takes Rivka vatila leisha. She becomes his wife. Vayehaveha, and he loves her. Vayinachim Yitzchak achar imo. And Yitzchak is comforted after his mother. Now, one of the lessons they always say over here is you see the Torah's attitude towards love. At first he marries her, then he loves her. First he marries her, then he falls in love with her, as opposed to loving her and then marrying her. First he marries her, then he loves her, because the nature of love has nothing to do with the world. What the world calls love, we call premature death punishments, right? That's what what the world calls love, we call kares, right? What the world calls love, we call lust, right? In all the movies, I'm falling in love with you. They just misspelled the word. I'm falling in lust with you. It's much more appropriate. Right? May not be PC, but it's much more appropriate. And so Yitzchak brings her home. She becomes the wife, and then he loves her. Right? One little detail in the shifting of the words, but the falling in love before marriage is what you call falling into infatuation. A guy who's married gets married. I'm telling you right now, if you're infatuated when you get married, you are looking for trouble. Because if you're infatuated, it means that it's artificial. Something's infatuating you. You should like the person, you should see potential with the person for growth and for companionship and for communication and everything else. But if you're infatuated with the person, who said you're supposed to be infatuated? The only reason you got that idea is because you were watching movies. Who said you're supposed to be infatuated? 50% of the people in the world who are infatuated get divorced nowadays. So what happened to the infatuation? The infatuation is you saw what she looked like in the morning when she wakes up. That's what happened to the infatuation. When her hair looks like a bird's nest, then it's not quite the same thing as when she looks like she's all made up on a date. All of a sudden you realize, gee, my goodness, what happened to her? Something happened, right? And that way, and where did all that infatuation go? Therefore, a woman once said that the thing that irritates her husband when they were going out, he thought it was cute. It's a profound line, When they were going out and she spilled something at the restaurant, or he saw her chewing so daintily, he thought it was cute. After they're married and he sees her chewing, it's not so cute anymore. All of a sudden it's irritating. Can you chew quieter, please? when you're going out, oh, she's so cute, she chews so cute. Yeah, till after you're paying for her food. Then it's not so cute anymore. So when it says, Vayiviyeh Yitzchak, oh, hello, sorry, Bo, Vatiloch, Vayaveh, that's a love that comes as a result of what happens after marriage. There's a love of giving to the other person, being devoted to the other person. That's the real type of love. Now, take a look at Rashi here. Rashi on Pasuk Samach Zayin, there's a lot of emphasis here on Sarah. He brings her into his mother's tent. Okay, you brought her into Sarah's tent. We understand that was Sarah's tent. What's going on? So take a look at Rashi. It's the first column, the right column of Rashi, about halfway down. Ha'ohela Sarah imo. If you see it, please show the person next to you. You brought her into the tent of Sarah, his mother. So Rashi says like this. Vayiviyeh, he brought her into the tent, veharehi Sarah imo, and behold, she was just like Sarah, his mother. Klomar, that is to say, v'nases dugmas Sarah imo, she became like Sarah. In what way? Shekol zman shesarah kayemes, as long as Sarah was alive, hayaner daluk me'erev Shabbos le'erev Shabbos. The candle would stay lit all week when Sarah was alive. She lit a candle, and apparently it stayed lit all week. She only lit one candle a week. Ubracha mitzuya be'isa, the dough was blessed. Somehow there was blessing in Sarah's dough. When she made dough, she made bread, there was extra special blessing in the dough. Ve'anan kosher al ha'ohel, and there was a cloud of glory above the tent. And then umishemesa pasku, when Sarah died, they ceased. They were no longer there. Ukshebas Rivka Chazru, when Rivka came in, they returned. All those things that were there when Sarah Imenu was there, when Rivka came back, they returned. That's what Rashi says. So Rivka becomes the replacement for Sarah Imenu. Right? Rivka's all the blessing that was missing. Rivka becomes the replacement for Sarah Imenu. When Eliezer goes looking for a wife, what's he looking for? A replacement for Sarah Imenu. She comes back, she's a replacement for Sarah Imenu. Now pay attention, gentlemen. Pay attention carefully. Look at that pasuk again. Vayiviyeh Yitzchak ha'ohela Sarah imo. Yitzchak brings her into the tent of Sarah, his mother. Vayikach es Rivka. Now if I was writing it, I would have just said Vayikach osa. He took her. Because at the end of the day, we know who we're talking about. Who are you talking about? He obviously didn't marry Sarah Imenu. Yet it says he took Rivka, Vatila Leisha, she became his wife. He's comforted after his mother. His mother's gone and he's comforted. Why does the Torah again go back and refer to her as Rivka? Why does the Torah refer to her as Rivka? The answer is, there's an awful lot of fuss here being made about Sarah Imenu. Want to make a big mistake in your marriage? Want to make a good mistake? I'll give you. If you'd like to make a mistake, here, I'll give you a free tip. Just tell your wife something that she does which is or is not like your mother. All right? Tell your wife that she should be more like your mother in a certain way, or that your mother bakes things a certain way, your mother makes food a certain way, your mother cleans a certain way. All right? That's a surefire method to then have to duck. Right? That is, as a practice, you're ducking before you say it. Right? Because the last thing a wife wants is because the wife says, but I'm not your mother. I'm not your mother. And you're not going to treat you like your mother. And guys want to be treated like their mother, and the wife's going to make it very, very clear, I'm not your mother. And if you think that I'm going to do that for you like your mother did, Now, Rivka is a replacement for Sarah. She's everything Sarah. But what does the Torah emphasize? At the end of the day, Vayikach es Rivka. He takes Rivka. She's not Sarah, man. She's Rivka. She's her own individual. Their own individual. In marriage, your wife is going to want to please you. Your wife will want to do, your wife, if she's smart, will call your mother to find out your favorite recipes and to find out your baking. Everything else, a smart wife will do that. A smart husband will pretend she doesn't have to do it. Right? I feel bad for the husband. This is something you will do one day. Gentlemen, I'm sure you're going to do this. You're going to be sitting at a table with your wife and your mother. You're going to be sitting at a table, whichever house you happen to be in, and somebody put out brownies. Whoever's house you happen to be in, you're going to pick it up and say, take a bite. Wow, these are the best brownies I ever had. Right? Now, somebody at that table is going to be very, very unhappy. Right? One of the two people is going to be very, very unhappy. And then you're going to have to do something pathetic, like figure out a way to diplomatically get, like, I mean, I meant these are the best brownies I ever had at this meal, something like that. In which case, nobody's going to like you. So you know that is the tension between a wife and a mother. So the Torah is teaching you, listen, she's like your mother, she's like your mother, she's like your mother, and you will subconsciously be looking for somebody like your mother. By the way, men are looking for subconsciously somebody who reminds them of their mother, but she's not your mother. And make sure she doesn't think that you're thinking that she should be more like your mother. Certain ways you're not going to want somebody like your mother. Certain ways you want something different than your mother. If your mother was very sloppy, you want a wife who's very neat. If your mother was very neat, you want a wife who's sometimes you dafka want that. In certain ways you want, in certain ways not. That's what you're looking for. Okay? Now, there's another idea here. Why is Rivka, it says here, Yitzchak was comforted after his mother. Why is he comforted? Okay, so the plain meaning is, he had a Sarah Imenu who raised him for 37 years. After being born, after being childless, I'm sure that Sarah Imenu took pretty good care of him and watched over him. And now for 3 years he's been without a mother. He's comforted after his mother. A man takes ton comfort in his wife when his mother's gone. Okay. But you see the commentaries say, Yitzchak was nervous. Yitzchak was very nervous. Because he figured that when he gets married, who's going to check out his wife for him to make sure she's suitable? Figure his mom's going to be involved. His mother's going to be involved to make sure she's not a negative influence, she's got the right qualities. Oi, his mother's gone. Now what's going to happen? He marries Rivka, and he sees that she really has the qualities that he needs in a wife. Okay, the fact that his mother is gone, so it's still what do you call it? It's still it worked out well. Now that aspect that he was worried about, not having the mother, that aspect is taken care of. The last thing for today is I'll just tell you one of the commentaries, and this is one of the classic commentaries. I'm not making this up. One of the classic commentaries says, you know why Yitzchak found comfort here after his mother? After his mother means after she was gone. Yitzchak was comforted after his mother was gone. So the Sefer Tzor Hamor, one of the classic commentaries, he says, Yitzchak was happy for 2 reasons here. He was comforted for 2 reasons. Number one, he was comforted for the fact that his mother will not have to go through the pain of seeing his loyalties shift to a daughter-in-law. It's very painful for a mother. And his mother, mothers want to do that. All mothers go through that. His mother's not going to have to go through the pain of seeing that shift, which the Torah says a man has to leave his parents. The Torah uses the expression he has to abandon his parents, and he has to cleave to his wife. His first loyalty is to his wife. But it's still painful for a mother. Mothers raise them for 20, 25, 30 years, and now, next thing you know, there's a shift in loyalties. Number one, his mother's not going to have to go through the difficulty of watching his shift in loyalty. Number two, his wife's not going to have to go through the difficulty of having a mother-in-law. He really says that. His wife doesn't have to go through the difficulty. He really says that. Sarah Moore says that. And you see, we're willing to admit what others won't admit. We're not as diplomatic. You know what the Gemara says? The Gemara says there's a natural tension between mother-in-laws and daughter-in-laws, and they hate each other. That's what the Gemara says. There's a natural tension between them, and the natural tension is understandable. Because she put in all this work, and some little girl's walking off with her product. She did 22 or 23 or 25 years of work, and now some little girl's taking it away. And that's hard on a mother-in-law. In the relationship, it's a very tricky relationship because neither one could ever do anything right. Now again, it takes 2 mature people who are working on themselves to get along. But the Gemara is telling us, underlying it, there's a tension, and there is a tension. Because, imagine the daughter-in-law who gives birth. Imagine the daughter-in-law who gives. So if the mother-in-law says, can I come over, we'd like some help in the house. Daughter-in-law's reaction is, well, you don't think I can handle it on my own? Very insulted. And if the mother-in-law doesn't offer help, daughter-in-law's reaction is likely to be, you don't see there's a baby here? Again, I'm not saying what they're saying, I'm saying what they're thinking. Each one is trying to prove themselves to the other one. There's a very natural hatred, so much so that the Gemara says, we waive the laws of testimony. Let's say a man disappears. The wife is an aguna. So normally, how many witnesses do you need in Beis Din? 2 male witnesses. One of the laws that's relaxed is that when a woman's husband disappears, you could basically get testimony from a lot of people who otherwise wouldn't be valid. A woman is relied on, even alone, to say, yes, I saw her husband and he died. He died in the concentration camp, her husband died. A woman's relied on to say such a thing. except a mother-in-law for a daughter-in-law for a mother-in-law. And a mother-in-law for a sister, and I think sisters-in-law also. Sisters-in-law meaning not two sisters married to two brothers. I mean, a sister-in-law, when you're married, when your wife's, how does a sister-in-law work? Your wife and your sister. There's also a natural tension because she's on your mother's side. It's a natural, and they're not relied upon, the Gemara says, because there's a concern they might give false testimony to mess the other one up. He died. She gets married, she goes, you just committed adultery. Right? That's what the Gemara says. So, we're thinking, what, are people so evil? It's not a question of evil, it's a question of they're telling us human nature. That's what the Gemara says. The relationship is a very tricky relationship. It could be done. You need two mature people. Not everything you're thinking needs to be said, and not everything that's said needs to be responded to, but it's a very, very tricky relationship. Very tricky. And so Yitzchak over here says, Baruch Hashem, she doesn't have to have a daughter-in-law, she doesn't have to have a son, a mother-in-law. Okay, we'll continue tomorrow.